So then, thinking about the reasons for policymaking and the variety of tools available to address the problems, the main question is, why does the government take action? Ultimately, we decide when the public decides that private action is not enough. However, when is that? Well, when the problem has become too severe or widespread. Yet what drives this? Public opinion? If we can see the extent of the damages? Sometimes police patrols or whistleblowers? Or is it a combination of the above? We can think of a variety of reasons for which the government would take action. First, political reasons. Elections, public opinion, even money drives action by government today. And ultimately, these issues that we see rise to the level of salience because of the media, interest groups, and ultimately politicians themselves. Often, moral or ethical reasons prompt the government to take action. Consider the increase in children and families crossing the border from Central America into the United States. Images of detained children pull at the heartstrings of America and ultimately prompt government action. And finally, more often than not, it's economic reasons that drive government action. Often what we call market failures, where the free market does not solve a problem and prompts the government to take action. All right, let's focus on these economic factors. Very often we're focused on what we call market failures. These are what we consider inefficient outcomes in the private market, basically when the free market does not solve a problem. The first type we consider are called externalities. Basically, think about it this way. We have transactions occurring between two parties. Externalities are the ripple effects that occur because of that transaction. We can break externalities down into two types, negative and positive. Negative externalities are where the third party is often harmed by the transactions between the two other parties. Think of it this way. Private sector production of a product resulting in pollution. Who's harmed by pollution? Us, the third party. Yet there are positive externalities where the third party benefits from the transaction. We think about it this way as something like education. The government invests money into education, and ultimately, what do we get out of it? A highly trained, better workforce. Ultimately, the people that are coming out of this education system are better equipped to enter into the workforce as productive citizens. The second market failure we consider are monopolies. Ultimately, where one entity has too much control over the market. Historically, you can think of groups like oil, gas, railroads, were some of the original monopolies, leading to the Sherman Act or the antitrust laws, if you want to think about that, breaking up the monopolies. The problem with monopoly is when one person or one actor controls the sole means of production of a product, what happens? Ultimately, if there's no competition, the price can go way up, and ultimately, if there's no competition, they can reduce the quality of the product. But what constitutes monopoly? Today, it's getting harder and harder to determine what is monopoly. Is Google monopoly, even though you have other search engines like Bing and Yahoo? What about Comcast and Verizon for your internet services? Are they monopolies? The third market failure we have is called an information failure. This occurs due to incomplete information, or sometimes what's considered an asymmetry of information between the two parties engaged in a transaction. In a perfect market, consumers would have all the information they need to make a rational decision choice. Do I purchase the product or not? Yet this is not a perfect world, and as such, information asymmetries exist. Take, for example, car sales. You want to buy a used car. You see the price tag and it says $3,000. However, the one thing that the seller is not telling you is that there's a $1,000 transmission issue with the car. If you knew the $1,000 transmission issue, what would that price be? It wouldn't be $3,000, it would be roughly $2,000. Yet the asymmetry of information works the other way around, not just between the seller having the information and the buyer not. What about the buyer itself? Consider health insurance. When you go to purchase health insurance, you could lie online about smoking or even having a heart condition. The price you receive or the quote you receive from the seller ultimately could be significantly lower and ultimately putting more risk on the seller. Information failures may not be a problem for certain items, but typically can be very problematic for complex items that are difficult to understand. Think about purchasing health insurance, or even if we want to address the issue of something like privatizing Social Security. Consumers ultimately can't make decisions because of the complexity of the issue itself. The final market failure occurs when markets cannot provide or protect the public good, or sometimes what we call the collective good. What are these public goods? Well, think about it. They're things that can be equally consumed, or essentially we can't restrict people from consuming. These are things like clean air, beautiful spaces, parks, wetlands. The problem is, these are common pool or sometimes what we call shared resources. Everyone uses them, and if left alone, individuals might use the goods up or destroy them. So ultimately, the government needs to step in and protect them.